loves, and welcome back to Hot Girls Eat Carbs. I'm your host, Brittany McChrystal, and this is your safe space for all things wellness, self-love, and sustainable weight loss. Thank you so much for tuning into my podcast episodes. I really appreciate you being here and us getting to spend this time together. And if this episode gave you any value, it would mean the world to me if you could give the show a rating, as I'm still a new podcast and it helps me push out the show to new listeners to discover me. So I just want to apologize for my voice currently. We had the Thai New Year over the weekend and it was a big water fight here in Koh Samui. And now my throat is really sore because the amount of water that I accidentally swallowed, probably not the best. So I hope it's all okay. But I did want to talk about something a little bit different in today's episode. And we are going off script because this is not just about wellness and your meals and your steps. It's also about your heart. It's about protecting your inner peace and about learning to let go of things that no longer feel like love, even when once they meant everything. So this one's for you if you've ever felt stuck in a relationship. For anyone who's cried themselves to sleep and still woke up in the hope that things would change. And for anybody who's ever asked, why can't I walk away when I know that this isn't right? This one is for you. Now, I've been holding off talking about this for a while now because even though I share so much of my life online, the workouts, the food, the glow ups, this part felt really heavy and really personal. But I realized that sometimes the things that we feel scared to share are exactly the things that somebody else needs to hear. So today I want to talk to you about heartbreak, about toxic relationships, and about that scared, terrifying, beautiful moment when you finally decide to choose yourself. I stayed in a relationship for over a year, even though I knew deep down that it wasn't right. I told myself I was holding on because I loved him, but if I'm being honest, I was just scared of being alone. And I want to share this story with you today, not because I have it all figured out, because I'm healing with you. And I want to show you that letting go doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful and it makes you free. So if you know when you're in something and deep down you know it's not right, but you stay anyway, that was me. I was in a relationship that didn't feel like love. It felt like control, like silence, like shrinking myself into something smaller so I could be easier to love. And I still held on. This man cheated on me and I still stayed. I told myself maybe it was a mistake. Maybe we could walk through it. But honestly, it just cracked open everything I had been trying so hard to ignore. He would tell me what I could and I couldn't post on social media. He told me my activewear was too revealing and that I needed to change before leaving the house. And at that time, I didn't see how slowly I was being asked to dim, to stop being me. He made promises and break them over and over again, then turn around and love bomb me with flowers, sweet words, big dreams, and for a moment, I'd believe him. I'd think, maybe this time it'll be different. And it would be, for a few weeks, and then the cycle would start again. I felt like I was constantly chasing the version of him that only showed up when he wanted to, and I justified it. When we were doing long distance, I told myself he's just busy or he's just had a hard day. But the truth is, sometimes he wouldn't even speak to me for a whole day. I was in the relationship, but I felt so alone, so invisible. And I stayed for over a year, not because I was happy, but because I felt stuck, because I was familiar, because I had built my world around him and the thought of walking away felt like I was losing everything. I was scared of being alone, scared of starting over, and he was all I had known, especially moving to Thailand and not having that many friends or a close network here. And that kind of comfort, even when it's hurting you, is hard to let go of. But looking back now, I can see it for what it was. It wasn't love. It was a trauma bond. I was addicted to the highs because they helped me survive the lows. I wasn't holding on to who he was. I was holding on to who I hoped he could be. I kept waiting for a version of him I saw in those rare good moments to become consistent, real, and safe. But he wasn't. And I was losing myself trying to make it work. And I want to say this if you're listening and nodding along, if this sounds familiar, you're not crazy. You're someone who wants to feel loved, seen, safe. And if you've been taught to settle for breadcrumbs, it makes sense you've tried to turn them into a meal. But you deserve more, so much more. You deserve consistency. You deserve softness. You deserve someone who just doesn't show up when it's convenient, but who stays and who chooses you every single day without conditions. And most of all, you deserve to choose yourself, even if it means walking away from everything that you thought was love. And the hardest part was, I didn't even realize how bad it had gotten. I would talk to my friends and I'd brush it off, like I was just going through a rough patch, or he was just going through something. But I was slowly disconnecting from myself. I was constantly anxious. I was unable to sleep. I was constantly second guessing, and I was constantly chasing those little moments of affection that came just often enough to keep me holding on. And that's the thing about toxic relationships. Sometimes the pain becomes your normal, and you don't even realize that you're not okay because you've been surviving off emotional scraps for so long. A trauma bond happens when your nervous system becomes addicted to the cycle of the highs and the lows. You're constantly being pulled between moments of intense connection and deep emotional pain. And that push-pull dynamic wires your brain to crave the relief more than the relationship itself. It's not love, it's survival. You cling to the good moments because they feel like proof that things can change. And you tell yourself that the version of them you saw for 2 weeks is the real them, and everything else was just stress or circumstances of a bad timing. But that's not love. That's emotional manipulation. And the scariest part, it doesn't always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels like confusion, like self-doubt, like constantly wondering, am I the problem? And once I finally understood what a trauma bond was, everything started to make sense. Why I couldn't leave even when I was hurting. Why I kept hoping he would change. And why I felt more alone in the relationship than I ever did on my own. And it wasn't just the fear of starting over. It was the emotional roller coaster my body had become addicted to. And no one talks about how hard it is to walk away from that and how messy it feels. How grief doesn't just hit you when the good parts are gone. It hits you when you realize the bad parts were never going to get better. And I won't pretend that it was easy. Leaving wasn't one big dramatic moment. It was quiet. It was heavy. It had me crying in my house after the call that ended in silence, realizing I didn't recognize myself anymore, and realizing I wasn't even asking for love. I was begging for the bare minimum and calling it enough. So I made the choice, not because I felt strong, not because I felt ready, but because I knew that staying was slowly destroying me. And it was after that first step, choosing myself, even if it didn't feel like I deserved better yet, even if it meant being alone, even if I had no idea what healing was going to look like, that choice cracked everything open. And that is where the healing began. At first, yes, it was uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do with all the silence. I was so used to waiting for his message, checking my phone, overanalyzing every word. And now it was just me, my space, my time, and my thoughts. But in all of that stillness, I started to hear myself again. I started being able to leave the house without having to check in with somebody to tell them where I was going 24/7. I started journaling again, even if I just wrote. I have no idea what I'm doing. I made playlists that had nothing to do with him. I slowly pieced my identity back together. Not who I was before him, but who I wanted to become without the weight of his voice in my head. And with every little choice, the quiet mornings, the solo dinners, the workouts, the tears, the boundaries, I started becoming her again. The girl who chooses peace over potential. The girl who knows silence from someone that isn't something to chase. It's something to walk away from. The girl who no longer begs for love that should have been freely given. So how do you heal? How do you move on when your heart still remembers everything? This is not a one-size-fits-all answer, but here's what helped me, and what I hope can hold you through your own healing too. You've got to stop romanticizing the potential. Let go of the version of them you created in your head. I know that it's hard. You fell in love with the highs, with the dream, with the moments that made it almost worth it. But we don't heal by clinging to what it could have been. We heal by seeing things clearly, not cruelly, just honestly. What they showed you consistently was the truth. Let that be enough. Come back to your body. When your nervous system has been on edge for so long, it forgets what peace feels like. Create small rituals that feel safe, like walking in the morning sun with a podcast, stretching before bed, making your morning coffee without checking your phone. Let your body relearn what calm feels like. Find something that's just yours. A playlist, a class, a new recipe, a journal prompt, something that doesn't remind you of them and doesn't require anybody else's energy. This is how you start building your identity back, through little choices that say, this is mine. Unfollow, mute, block. And girl, I mean it. Healing doesn't happen when you're constantly refreshing their stories. You don't need to know who they're with or what they're doing or looking at their follow account. Protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Talk to somebody who makes you feel like you again. Whether it's your best friend, your sister, your coach, your therapist, healing isn't meant to be done in isolation. Let somebody hold space for you. Say it out loud. You're not a burden, you're just a human with a heart. Some days you'll feel strong, and other days you'll cry over a memory you thought you were past. This doesn't mean that you're not healing. It means that you are. And grief and healing isn't linear. Don't shame yourself for having a soft heart. Remind yourself of who you're becoming. Write it down if you need to. I am choosing peace. I am rebuilding my life. I am learning to love myself more than the idea of being loved by somebody else. Speak it out, even if your voice shakes. This part is yours now. Moving on isn't a destination. It's a daily decision. To choose yourself, to stay kind, to move forward, even if you're still healing. And slowly, you'll notice the shift. You'll sleep through the night. You'll laugh at something without thinking of them. You'll catch your reflection and feel proud. And you'll realize that you've come back to yourself. And that is the real glow up. Now I want you to pop this in your journal prompt for this week. What am I still holding on to that's keeping me from healing? And what would it feel like to finally let it go? You don't need to write the perfect answer. Just start. Let the words come out, messy if they need to. This is just for you. So your weekly mantra, I am choosing myself today. I am safe to let go of what no longer feels like love. I am worthy of softness, of peace, and of starting over. Repeat that in the mirror. Whisper it during your walk. Let it anchor you when old feelings resurface. And if nobody has told you lately, I am proud of you for listening to this episode, for being brave enough to face the hard stuff, for showing up for yourself in a world that constantly asks you to shrink. Healing doesn't always look like confidence. Sometimes it looks like crying in your car, deleting the number, unfollowing in silence, or choosing not to reply. But it's all valid and it all counts. And you're allowed to move on without closure. You're allowed to stop waiting for an apology. And you're allowed to choose you over and over again. Thank you so much for being here. If this episode helped you even a little, it would mean the world if you could share it with somebody who needs it too, or just leave a review. And that's how we keep growing this space together. I will see you in the next episode.